I want to start off by asking a question, share the story, and then ask you 12 more questions to create a personal enagram that will be a representation of what the Storied Artifacts want to share with you for today. And then get into the elements that you spoke about, and I'll share the prototypes with you. And it's not the final form, it's just to initiate the discussion and creation. And while doing so, I'm going to have you hold the raw piece of wax, because the storied artifacts are all about your energy and your story. And by holding it, that will be infused in the wax in the raw form. And then I'll use that wax to create your piece.
Okay.
Okay, so I was curious, we met at the Mission Matters event and liked each other enough to want to get together. Initially, I thought that we connected because we both are involved in holding sacred storytelling as our core. But specifically, when I was describing the storied artifacts, what made you really interested in being pulled forward to talk about this?
Right. Well, initially, my interest came from the title itself.
Yeah.
A story artifact, something that's sacred, but something that captures the essence of the individual.
Yes.
And I believe that everything that we speak about, everything we wear, everything says a story about ourselves. So to have another piece that's representing me that I can project to the world, like, that's what drew me to it.
I'm so happy I can give this to you because you're a gift to me. Your story is the epitome of the strength of the human soul. And you have this innate ability to turn what appears to be something really terrible and alchemize it, transmute it into something that benefits all people. And that takes a very big soul, a very old soul. I've shared that with you.
Sure.
So I love that.
Can I ask you where the title came from?
Like everything in my life, like my business name and all of that, it just came to me. It's always like sitting still. And as I was last year taking a pause in my business, my husband got cancer, so I was spending a great deal of time taking care of him to make sure that he was healing. And in those quiet moments, whenever something big happens, it's always like we're passing through a gateway or a passageway. And so I always want to be aware of, like, am I still going down the same road? And what came to me was I was finding just with my customers that they love this notion of tangibility. And even if I was helping somebody with their business operating model, it really was pulling on their essence. And then, of course, the logical stuff of marketing and business development and all that kind of stuff. But that's what made their work and their results so powerful.
Right.
So as I was thinking about this, their talismans, there's this mystical aspect to it. And it's the thing that has always drawn people to me, is the mystical aspect. They're like, oh yeah, you worked in corporate and you do all this stuff, but like there's something about you. I love your energy. What is that?
Sure.
So decided to pull that forward and lead with that. And so as I was thinking about it, everything I do has always dealt with stories about money or about success, relationships, and did a lot of stuff with the subconscious. So I knew storied also meaning vintage, as well as a legacy or an heirloom piece, right?
For sure.
And then as I was looking through definitions of magic, there was always this notion of an artifact or an object of attention that was used. And I didn't want it to be like a crystal ball or anything. I wanted it to be on the person and have it be part of that person's essence, but also to support them throughout their life for the rest of their lives. So that's how the story artifact came to me, as I was thinking about which doorway am I moving through.
Right.
So what I really loved about everything as I was pulling together the imagery for The story itself, you know, and I know that whatever we speak or what we think is what we bring into the world. It really speaks to this deep creative power that all of us have. You don't have to
Right.
be an artist
Exactly.
to be creative. And so, um, what I always tell people as we're working with objects or creating a new line of business is that we have to name it so we can hold it so it can start to breathe.
Exactly.
And that was like the beautiful thing that the Storied Artifact wanted me to lead with, was that in this moment we are creating something for you, a legacy, an heirloom, a statement piece that represents your essence, that will be eye-catching. It'll be the key to really genuine conversations going forward, because people are going to feel that energy, the intention, the depth of your soul in it.
Right.
So the whole aspects or the attributes of it is to bring forward, without being woo-woo, this soul's mirror and mindfulness and this support, if you ever need it in the future, that can be used as both a support, a rooting, but also a way of navigating, you know, making room for what's arriving so that you have your hands free so you can receive it. And then always your guidance, the guidance and the root. So it makes like this beautiful, this cross, the Storied Artifacts, its essence in itself, it wants people to be unbound, meaning the words they speak, how they walk through the earth is both wild and cultivated. In the sphere, you'll notice that things are inverted. And in general, the energy that you're walking through very regally and very rooted is this state of inversion where people are like, what used to work doesn't work anymore. You know, politically, things are different. I'm very unstable. So it can leave a lot of people feeling like the ground is dissolving underneath them or that things are burning up. And both are prayers to heaven. You know, both states of I can't find my footing. That means that the ground underneath me hasn't yet been created because I haven't created it.
For sure.
And when things seem to be burning to the ground, the smoke carries our prayers upward. For those usually who are going through a liminal space, it seems like everything's unformed and you can't really get a clear vision of what's going on. It can seem a little murky. And what I've noticed with a lot of people when they're in that space, the tones that they see are very saturated, very dark. And as you know, we want the richness of a saturated tone, but we also want the lightness. And the storied artifacts are a great way of blending the two together. So the main thing as far as creating the artifact, um, it wants to be a key for you. It can be a key for the other people who see it, because the power of the key is not in the key so much, it's in the hand that holds it. And the hand and being able to see yourself differently will find the correct lock and the correct door and passageway to walk through. It's a beautiful process. And stories often point to the correct gate or door. Your work is really important because of that. And in that, as we shed our skin, there's this notion of this ability to go deeper into reality, right? Do you feel that way?
Definitely. I always say that the hardest part of change is change itself.
Yes.
Once you change and put the ED on the end, that part is like you continue to flourish. But that center process to go from this side to that side is the hardest part.
I think what you're doing and the men and women that you're building within your ecosystem are changing that. The artifacts are just an articulation of that essence that we can hold on to. And I feel like you're already in this process of when you know your magic, our roots grow deeper and our root fingers find the right people who get us. You and I found each other, you know, and other people that you're meeting. And this ability for people who appear to be very different, from very different backgrounds, know each other, that we're all parts of this really beautiful tapestry, which is what the universe is. There's space for all of us. We have more in common than we don't.
Right.
If we are really grounded in who we are. Um, it's really the notion of being true. I can create something very similar, essentially an enagram based on the Hawaiian wayfarers.
Okay.
So I love the story of the way the Hawaiian canoe guys would paddle from Hawaii to Tahiti, or they even came to California in the 1800s. And they didn't have Siri, they didn't have GPS, but what they did was they used natural elements. And of course, they used the stars. And so I wanted to share what the artifacts wanted to share with anyone who wants to hear their story. And that is, as they were paddling, they never thought that they were paddling towards land. They always felt that with each stroke, they were pulling the land closer to them. So they were sovereign. No one had dominion over them. It didn't matter that they were in a tiny boat in the middle of the Pacific. They were here. Right. And the land was coming towards them. Wow. And so I think that's a really great way to think about what's coming and the way that you create. You're already in your space. You already have a great story, and you're growing exponentially, and you're automatically pulling in the people who really love what you're doing and who want to help. You're pulling it in. You're pulling it in, and so the essence of what they always looked up to was the North Star, for their guidance. And so to translate all the star stuff into earthly elements, I've translated a lot of the stuff that I learned in 2022 when I was studying ethnobotany, which is really what the indigenous people, primarily the Chumash Indians in this land, how they use the plants and the animals for food, tools, and medicine. So to bring this notion of this guidance, your relationship to the heart of the universe for your guidance, if it's God, Great Spirit, whatever you want to, whatever word you want to use, it's the notion of a feather. Because a lot of mystical people use feathers as a messenger from the physical world up to the divine. But also when you find a feather on the ground, a lot of people say, those are my guides communicating with me to let me know that I'm on the right path. And it's something very beautiful about that. And I found something very similar correlation between the leopard and this guidance for the right path with the leopard and the feather. Okay. So there's a tie-in right there. So there are times when it's cloudy like this, and depending on the season, they couldn't see the North Star because of the way that the world was tilting. Right. So they relied on the Southern Cross. And when I was thinking about the Southern Cross, it was the support system. When they couldn't see their guidance, they knew that something else had their back. And to ground that into the world, it's really the notion of a seed. Last of a dying seed. A seed has everything that it needs to grow and to thrive in its blueprint. And so that's how using this new way of navigating is to know that you are always supported, even when you can't see your North Star, your guidance. Maybe you're not getting the messages. You lean back and let the earth help you. You're always supported. You always will be. The notion of having north and south kind of taken care of, we want to have guardrails on the side. So the Hawaiians always believed that the sun was arriving from the east. They didn't have the word east, but they always had this notion of the east. And so you think about it, when something is arriving, when you're launching your podcast, when you're creating a new film, you're organizing yourself, right? You're getting your ducks in a row. If there's stuff, maybe it was a previous storyboard that you were thinking of, it's not quite the thing that you want, you throw it away. You're making space for what's arriving. So the notion of arrival for me was the symbol of the mugwort leaf, which was the chumash used for both medicine and all of that, but it held the ember of the fire as they were nomadically traveling around. And the person who carried that mugwort bundle was a sacred spark holder. And all of us, even if we're burnt out or maybe we're down, we always have that ember in ourselves.
Right.
And so all we need to do is to blow on that, to make space, to bring light to things that maybe are ready to be let go. That's the notion of arrival. And then on the left, as the waves would come in, we always felt like the waves were bringing in things that they wanted to receive, whether it was fish, maybe it was the wayfarers coming back from their journey. So we had arriving and then receiving on this side. And we always want to make sure our hands are free so we can catch what's coming. And so when we think about receiving and what's arriving, this moves along a spectrum of trust. We have to trust that what's arriving is meant for us and we've done everything that we can. And to receive it takes a tremendous amount of trust. People tend to over-engineer, and like keep interfering with it. So being able to have both hands balanced takes a lot of trust. And for one's guidance and the support, you have to know. You have to know yourself. You have to know that you're always guided, and you have to know that you're always supported. So we have trust and support as the axes. So that was one thing, one way of using the artifact. In your case, it's really easy because we're going to create a pendant. So it's round, and you can always think of it that way of like, I'm always supported, I'm always guided. I know how to make space for what's arriving, and I know I'm open to receive it, whatever form it takes. Because often when you have that line of trust, whatever comes to you is far better than anything that you could imagine. It's like weird that way, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Just being at this point right now, sitting across from you with the path I've taken.
I know.
So it's just, I believe in that. Like, you just never know. You can do everything in your power to achieve what you think you're capable of achieving. But even what that looks like is you're going to exceed your own expectations. If you do what you say, like have some self-awareness, find your greater source, connect with that. Don't worry about, don't self-censor yourself for any external opinions, and just exist as you are. Once you do that, it's like you're going to always exceed your own expectations. As far as what you can accumulate, as well as the impact that you can have in this world.
You're so deep. And what I love every time I hear you speak, or even reading your text or your book, I mean, it was obvious to me that you know what you're talking about. There are so many people who are like, will say things and you could tell it's not quite rooted. There's a little bit of caricature, pantomiming, and it really is such a pleasure and an honor to know you because of that. There are not a lot of people who have that ability to know it and then to show up with it. Yeah. So I want to just put this in the middle. This is juniper bush, and the Chumash used it to purify physical objects. To your left is the mugwort. I'll just put that there so it doesn't go away. To the north, we have a feather. And what I love about the feather is people always think, oh, your guidance is always like the angels and it's pure. And it's like, yeah, but sometimes the truths that we hear can be not all white. It can be like, ooh, that was, that hurt a little bit, but I can see I needed that. So I love the feather that has both the light and the dark in it. And the last one is we have the shell. The shell was often seen as the ear to the sea. And I loved your story about how you would go to the ocean oftentimes. There's something about it. It's huge. It has its own perpetual motion that's always going.
For sure.
And um, I love it too. I think a lot of people are naturally drawn to it. And shells know that as well. What I found is when people have this ability to be very grounded when things are very fluid, like
Right.
water, it has this ability, you have a ability to sink and float at the same time so that you're not drowning. It's the ability to go really deep and then be able to breathe at the same time when everything is moving around.
Right.
And the shell for me was a great representation of that. And then seed, you know the seed
For
very
sure.
well. And this particular seed is a juniper bead. And I think it's the Apache who actually termed these seeds as ghost beads. They're
Right.
ancestors, mythical creatures that those who perhaps are an Apache can't see. And so they would often string these juniper beads and they're around their neck, they're into necklaces so that they had this form of protection against the unseen. That's true. As it relates to unseen things, though, as I mentioned, the blueprint has everything that you need.
For sure.
So we can kind of kick back and feel supported knowing that we don't have to over engineer, because when you get that idea and you land it, everything's going to work out. You're going to think of the next best step. You're going to meet someone who's going to help you determine the next step if you don't know what it is, you know?
Right.
Okay. If you just look at this enneagram, we have guidance, supporting, receiving, and arriving.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you some 12 questions.
Right.
And we're going to see what your enneagram has to say. So from 1 to 10, 1 being not so much, 10 is like all the time, like I'm cool with it. I'm just going to ask you what seems to be random questions, and then we're going to look and see how that all plays out. So when it comes to envisioning new things, and you're a very creative person, but do you find that it's really important before anything ends or you begin anything to have a vision about it, or do you just go, okay?
Yeah.
So like 1 to 10.
10 for sure.
That's what I thought.
Right.
And then as things become very dynamic, let's just say you're doing a film project and things are like kind of unexpected, like, oh, didn't know that was going to fall through. Is it easy to navigate dynamic change, or is it better just to turtle in and like not deal with it? So
no, yeah, I'll lean in. So I'll say that's a 10 as well.
Okay, I love it. Is there enough space and time in your life in general for opportunities to be embraced?
I would say that's pretty much like an 8.
Good.
You know?
Yeah. That's honest. So a lot of people are feeling really compressed in the world. You know, things are changing for them, and they're really busy trying to recreate the best of the past.
Right.
And that's hard because it's not there anymore. We're going this way.
For sure.
So you know, you have this really, as I mentioned, very grounded perspective in essence, and that allows you to like kind of look through the chaos and all of that and see the opportunities.
And a lot of that comes from, like you said earlier, trusting the process, trusting myself, trusting the energies around me to support me.
Yeah.
Even that during times where financially I'm restricted.
Yeah.
You know, to where by doing so, I've been able to make things happen that if I was just focusing on the money, it never would have happened.
Yeah.
But just trusting in my capabilities and being able to see like water my way through the cracks and connect with the right people.
Yeah.
I've been doing stuff that this money can't buy.
Exactly.
So
exactly. There are so many people who are bound by money, and you know, I talk to objects a little bit differently than a lot of people. And so I asked money, like, what is it that you want to tell us? And it said, I really wish people knew that I was tired of carrying the burden of humanity.
Mm.
I'm not here for that. I'm not here to restrict or enable anybody to live. You're already living. And the way that you described it is perfect.
Mm.
Because when we focus on the money, we put our body weight on it, and it's like, oh my God.
Right.
Like that's a lot of weight for me to carry. And so it's very difficult for things to unfold and to weave and to materialize
Sure.
on itself.
Right.
And so I think you're on the fast track for that. And what you're working on is really, in my humble opinion, just watching the economic markets, because I spent so much time in that arena and looking at what's happening politically, economically, what's happening to society and technology. This very human centric, soulful way of creating is much more faster than having a business plan and then your metrics and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. That
Right.
was the old era.
Right.
So yeah, you're the leading edge of that.
Mm.
So let's see, do you see clearer on your own or with other people's input?
Mm. Clearer with other people's input. I love hearing different perspectives. Even if I disagree, still it deepens my perspective.
Sure.
So yeah, clearer with other people's.
I love that because the era of people saying this is my way, and that Lord of the Rings character where Golem, he was like my precious, and then it's like, yeah, it's great, but having that openness to listen to other people's opinions, and it can deepen it, or you could just say that's interesting, not really my thing, but
sure.
I still respect you.
For sure.
And that respect and that integrity means everything. People talk about it all the time, but they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to be it. Love that about you and that you're rating. Would you say, like, when I talk about energy, I'm going to ask you about energy. It's not woo-woo energy, but just how you're feeling, how energetic, how vital you're feeling. So does your energy regenerate continuously, or is it a matter of peaks and valleys?
I would say continuously.
I know.
Yeah.
So you 10, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If you were to give this question a percentage, a number, the balance between letting things unfold and making them happen.
There is a wait. What's that? How does the answer go?
So, like, if you are really all the time, I'm letting things go, and it's easy for me to let things happen, you could give it a 10. If it's like, I don't know, man, I make things happen,
Yeah,
and then I
I
kind
tilt
of
more.
hope
Exactly. Yeah, I tilt more on the making things happen.
okay.
I'm big on taking the initiative, but at the same time, knowing that you can't control everything.
Yeah.
So I'm also big on like not completely holding on for dear life as to making this thing happen, because I've noticed up until this point that 9 times out of 10, what we put exactly on paper doesn't pan out that way. Doesn't. So you got to be like water.
Yeah, you got to be like
you got to be fluid, but at the same time, be a forward motion type person.
Yes, yeah.
Not passive.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, when people talk about manifestation, they're like, well, I'm just going to like have my crystal and then it's gonna go. But the magic of human and our creativity is about, you have the vision and then you take action. That's the materialization of your vision, is what you do, right? So would you say, as far as balancing that, it's 100% of the time, or 10%, 10% being 100% of the time, or is it something that's still emerging? Maybe it could be 60% of the time, or I don't know, figuring it out 20% of the time. What would you say?
Yeah, I think it's still emerging. I'm most of the way there. I would say 80%.
Yeah.
But I do know it's still room for growth in that constant balancing act of doing so.
Yeah.
Now that I've been out a year and a half now as an adult, so it's like that I have to play with as well.
Yeah.
In the real world.
Yeah.
I never really experienced life, going in at 18, I never really experienced success on a different level. I never really experienced like human beings on a visceral level because I was so detached.
Right.
So it's like all these new experiences, I came out like well prepared in many areas, but on a human level, it's still like, so it's a constant balancing act of making things happen, because you have to make things happen with people. You can't just make things happen. So it's a constant growing process. But I believe like what I've been able to do so far and how I feel, like you said, on the inside, like I'm like 80% there.
Yeah. Humans are perplexing. You know, they're infallible. We all know that they're doing their best. You know, that's their path, and they don't always do what they say they will. And I think you're very generous, because I think there's enough space in your heart if things go awry or they don't go as planned. There's none of this like, fuck you, asshole, you fucked me up. It's more like, okay. And it's not a doormat, okay, like, oh, okay, I'll just slither off underneath the rock. It's like, okay, it happened, I'm gonna keep going. Yeah. That's like the ultimate sign of what resilience is, what benevolence is, and what grace looks like to yourself and to everyone around you. It's very powerful. You know, like the name of my company is One Ripple, and the tagline is One Ripple can change everything. It's those types of acts that don't make it on social media. KTLA doesn't come like film you like, oh, he's so good. But it's these things that ripple out into perpetuity. So we don't have to do anything again. The age of prescription is over, where you have to do certain things, but there's this real beauty in allowing that to ripple out, because it comes back. Like whatever ripples outward always ripples inward again, and it's often 3 times greater than what you put out. So a lot of people may not be as emergent as you, and they get very upset, and then what happens? You know, more of the disappointment comes to them. And it's like, you know, somebody will say, well, I want a lot of peace, but if they don't know how to be peaceful, then they get a lot of chaos until that muscle memory, you know, comes to them, and then they get all victimized and complain and whine and all that. So you're extraordinarily well versed. So I want to ask, from 1 to 10, do you always get what you want?
No, because if I did, I would have. So I would say like most of the time, it's crazy because once again, I may try to get something one way, but it happens another way.
Yes.
So it's like the vision being the end game, I still achieved the vision, but the plot to get that didn't happen that way. So it's but being fluid, trusting in the process, and already understanding these things, I'm able to go through that process. And I would say most of the time, but not all the time, no. But I enjoy that though. You can't, because once again, we're going through people as we're traveling throughout this universe. So you can never get this every single time, because there's always going to be somebody you got to get behind you, get beside, sever ties with, connect with, like every step of the way. And like you said, people are perplexing. So I don't think I would ever always get everything.
But you know, I agree with you 110%. But the fact that you know this, even if somebody turns out to be a douchebag and you don't get what you want,
it's like, all right,
it's a course correction for you to get what you do want. And so like it is, the path is like kind of crazy, but so I think you're spot on. But like, what would you say, 1 through 10?
At this point in time, I'll say it's at a strong 6 of getting what I want.
Good. That's more than most people. Okay. Are you all set to get more?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So like a 10.
For sure.
And I think I already know the answer, but like, do you trust innately that circumstances will exceed your expectations?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Just meeting you
I know.
at the
Well, same here.
business, at a private event, an invite event
Yes.
with all these professionals throughout the corporate world, but all these amazing human beings. It's
Yeah.
like just to be sitting across from you guys and for you guys to actually consider who I am and what I have to say, like
Yes.
where I come from. Like
Yeah.
even that situation alone, it's like my circumstances has always been exceeding me, like
Yes.
every step of the way.
But it was so natural to do so.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we're all showing up as ourselves, and we're not caricatures of our achievements or our stories. Our stories are part of it, but that's not who we are.
Right.
You know, and like what you say about the narrative that you tell yourself is everything. Hers
Right.
is still emerging because
Right,
it's
right.
still external and like outward stuff.
Right.
So, 3 more questions. Does it to receive something, does that feel good? Does there need to be a reason that you receive good things in life or bad things in life? Does there have to be a reason for it?
I would say I believe so because I'm always looking for the reason behind every situation. What's the reason why this happened?
Because you're a
You know,
seer and a
yeah.
seeker.
Whether it's something I did do or did not fail to do.
Yeah.
Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Good or bad?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's the ultimate in responsibility and
Right.
accountability. And I think people who are seekers and seers have a tremendous amount of trust because they're not afraid of what they find.
Oh yeah, absolutely
You
not.
know,
Yeah.
it's really beautiful. So, would you say that's a 10?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like you have to do more to get more? Or is it in the big picture? I'm talking big picture.
Yeah, I got a big, hairy, audacious goal. So I'm always looking to see how can I maximize my output as to the work I put in. But I also believe, as I was telling someone the other day, sometimes in order to add on, you shave off. You ain't gotta keep having 20 different hustles. A lot of times you look at your budget. What are you spending your money on? By you shaving these things off with the same hustle, you can add, you can accelerate.
Yeah.
So I believe in both things, like being able to maximize your output without complete burnout, but also knowing like what to shave off.
Yeah.
You know?
Again, it's that balance.
Right.
So 1 to 10, what would you say?
I would say it's high though. It's still like a 7.
Okay, yeah. Perfect.
Of doing more. Always looking.
Yeah. And people often don't realize that rest is doing something also, like just from a physical perspective. They think they have to be booked back to back and doing all this stuff. But sometimes if like what I would do often in corporate because it was so intense is I would block half an hour.
Right.
So people thought I was in a meeting, but I was outside.
Right,
you know,
right.
looking at the roof.
Right.
So sometimes not doing anything or letting things go is also doing as well,
Right.
even though it doesn't fit the normal definition of what doing is.
For sure. And I think for me, that's what takes off those 3 points is me having to tell myself to sleep, to rest, you know, because my form of like resting while awake is exercising for that small pocket of time. Look,
Moving.
And I'm still moving.
Yeah.
So once that pocket of time collapses, I'm back to, once my brain wake up, I'm already thinking about what do I have to do today instead of just laying there and just decompressing for an hour or so.
Right.
An hour of being woke already, I'm like, man,
Late.
Yeah, I'm already late, you know? So stuff like that to where I still do get rest, but I know that's part of my challenge though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to know. And you know, I would say whenever you're building something, the tendency is to go for it. Have you always been able to innately trust in general compared to where you were. Let me rephrase it.
Yeah.
Innately trust, just innately trust
In comparison, yeah, from who I used to be to who I am, yeah, definitely more.
Okay.
But it's still like shaky. Like it's still hard to trust. Like and my woman, she says it all the time. She already know, like, even though she know I trust her, but she know it's something there that keeps me from trusting her completely. Right. And it's not just her as a woman, just in general. Like you said, right. It's like that trust is hard. What we both been throughout our lives. It's like it's hard to even like, and then just knowing the evilness within human beings.
I know.
Just knowing that, because it's a lot of stuff that happened that confirms your distrust. Yeah. So, yeah. But you got to know how to let that go and just leave that with this individual. Right. Don't convict this person off of the crimes of this person. So that's a balancing act.
It's hard.
So I would say in comparison, yeah, more, but in general, yeah.
In general, if you were to give it a number, what would you say?
I would say it's more than half now today. 6? You know, I would say 6. Okay. Yeah. Because I can trust people to be themselves.
But here's the wax. I want you to hold it, and for the rest of our conversation, I'm gonna have you imprint your essence, because that is going to be the basis of your artifact.
And what is this made out of again?
It's wax.
Oh, okay.
It's wax. And let me share with you, like, with the lost wax method, and what I love about it is this methodology started, some people say, around Egyptian times, a long time ago. And I love being able to have somebody put their essence, as we're talking, and to be very deliberate to focus everything that we talked about into the wax.
Right.
So that what I find is people's magic tends to expand when it changes form. So wax obviously has an essence of it, but when they put it into the cast, they'll attach like a little stem they're going to attach a stem to your pendant that's attached to a tree that is put into a substance that's very, very much like soft plaster. It's called investment. And so the canister will hold that. They'll heat up the gold and they pour it in. And what happens is the wax disperses, but the investment remembers the form. So even though in your life you might go through a few more iterations, your essence remains the same. And what I've noticed with people as they go through gateways and as they transform, their essence gets bigger. One example is during the Altadena fire. I grew up in Altadena, so I was very tied to what was happening. And as I got verification that my childhood home had burned, the first thing I felt was an incredible amount of gratitude. So there was no mourning or, anger or anything like that, because I knew that all of the good memories and the bad memories also were released from their physical form so that they could grow bigger and move farther away and reach more people. So that is this transmutation, the alchemization, your story. It may change, as the last of the dying seeds start to sprout out, and you maybe create adjacent businesses, but it's still you.
Right.
And getting to know yourself at your essence is really important.
Right, for sure.
The prototypes that I have that I'm going to unwrap are not necessarily how the object is going to look, how your pendant, your artifact's going to look.
Right.
But this is what I found. When I was working in corporate, you'd be surprised how people don't know how to think. And so I would ask them, like, okay, so what are we doing? And they were like, what? Right. So they always needed something to look at, to react to. And so it was a faster way of creating the leopard, water. And then for seed, I just kind of just used your logo, but we can change it to something else.
Right.
So I'm going to show you some imagery, and then show you some of the prototypes, and then we're going to soften the wax so that you can put your attention and your essence, everything that we spoke to, it remembers because it's been activated and brought to the surface. So we thought that we would have something like maybe 1.5 inches. That's about 1.5 inches.
Right.
And with lost wax, what I always, I would suggest doing that. Like, do you want to take it off, take your necklace off just to make sure? With lost wax in the process, if I were to make a size 7 ring, I would make it size 7.25 because about 0.25 of the material shrinks.
Oh, okay.
So when I actually do carve the size of the pendant, it's going to be larger, like a few millimeters bigger. And what we can do also is,
and for those who don't know, these 3 images that I told her, are symbolic to me in my life when she asked me about it. And the first one was water, because when I was in my past life in the trenches doing all these devious activities, it was times where I would just isolate myself and go to the beach in Long Beach and stare at the water, reflect, before that was the only type of quietness I experienced before I went back into the trenches. So as I matured and got deep within myself, sitting in prison, I thought about water even more, and just the whole concept of water, and felt like to even make it to this point today that I had to behave like water. I had to find the cracks in the wall, every barrier that was put up, every time I had to detour and maneuver and go back to the drawing board, like I had to behave like water, and like she said, maintain my essence all the way through. That's the short of it. And then the leopard, I was always fascinated by the leopard as I was into animals because how adaptable they are. They're all across the world, and they say that there are 20,000 more of them than any other cat species because they can adapt anywhere they go. So I identify with that with my life's journey. And then the fact that they're isolated, solitary creatures, I identify with that. They're enemies with everybody in the jungle. So just everything that comes with a leopard, which also connects to a jaguar and a panther because they're all part of the same family, I identify with. That's the short of that. And then the seed, I'm last of a dying seed, so that alone made me think about that concept even more. What it becomes is in the blueprint of it already. So I identify with that. It's like us trusting ourselves as individuals that everything that we would need to get over any hurdle, to accomplish anything we want in life, to get past any checkpoint, it's already embedded in us. A lot of times we look outside of, in my past life, I thought the gun had all the answers. I thought, the direction of my older peers had the answers. I thought my brothers had the answers, but in all actuality, it was in me the whole time, and I had to reconnect with that by piecing together the dots in my journey because I was always into storytelling, but the streets had a greater pull on me. So that's the short of that. So I chose these 3 images as being symbolic to my life.
I would have to say that I would not expect other people to come so quickly to knowing themselves. And so that was beautiful. So looking at the size, I think we said 1.5 inches.
Right.
Is that still a thing?
I'm what I can eat, got glizzy in the tucky spot. Get caught and use Miranda rights, cause we don't fuck with cops. All the ethics to the game, they instilled in me. Suppress the dark side on purpose, but it's still in me.
and open that. It's the enagram. And okay, so you ready?
I think think so.
Okay, let's go.
I think so. Okay. Wow. Oh. You got the leopard, you got the water, and you got the sea.
So I wanted to share, by you holding it, you're the first human to hold it.
And this right here means much more to me than this Rolex I have on. Because thanks to Joy, I had a hand in crafting this. We didn't have a hand in crafting Rolex.
Yeah.
You know, so the fact that my story has been put into something that's much more tangible, it's attached to my history, not Rolex, you know. But so this means much more. And then I'm a big fantasy fan. Lord of the Rings, you know, The Hobbit, Pirates of the Caribbean. If you notice, in all fantasy movies and in a lot of horror films, there's always an artifact that's tied to something much more meaningful and much larger to the overall story, providing answers to whoever the seeker is. So for my children and for my so-called followers throughout life and those who want to know my story, this will provide answers to them as to my story. So
Yeah.
it's amazing. I love it.
I love it too, and they're meant to be eye-catching, not just because of the size, but the uniqueness. No one else in the world ever in the history of humanity will have it.
We just got done picking up the statement piece, you know, this medallion that was custom made by me and crafted by Joy Osaka Liu, who is the founder and CEO of One Ripple, the Storied Artifacts, which actually sponsored the channel Last of a Dying Seed. And through that brand deal, we crafted this heavy piece right here, the 14 karat gold medallion that's worth about 20K. So man, it's amazing. It just goes to show the value in our story, and from somebody who made that transition, elevated and rewrote his narrative. You know what I'm saying? So man, it's a blessing. I'm grateful. And y'all go check out her website, One Ripple. Y'all go check out the Storied Artifacts. I'm gonna have all her links in the description and the page. And hopefully this move everybody that's a part of that culture of buying all these brands that they didn't have a hand in building or creating and start making custom pieces. You know what I'm saying? That's unique to you, that you had a hand in creating.
Big bruh said you could be a pimp. All you gotta do is have a mind and you can lead the bitch. Brainwashed by the six, but then with self-imposed limitations. Trying to hit this home run before we load the bases. Never had no patience. All my partners died young, and yet and still we emulated examples that they died from.